We've talked about the concepts now of what is a class and what is an instance of that class or an object. We learned about a person class. We could have people being instances of that class with their attributes and methods. Let's talk about how we can create this in Python. Here's the exciting stuff, right? So this is how we create a class in Python. That's it. I mean, we've got less than 20 lines of code, and all of this is not actually even the building of the class. These 13 lines of code, we've got a comment, some white space, some blank lines. You're looking at about 10 lines of code, and we've created a class. We could do it in shorter than that. It's not overly complex to use basic classes. So let's talk about this. This is the class. This is the definition of our person class, what I've got outlined here. This here is the object or instantiation. We've created a variable, we've called it person1, and we've assigned it to the person class, an instance of the person class, and we filled out some values here that will be input into our class: name, age, gender, when an object is built. We'll talk more about that in a little. So we've got our class, we've got an instantiation or object or instance of a class. We've got our attributes. These are just variables of the class, of these instances of the class. So our person, we could access their name, their age, their gender. We could access that. These are values or attributes that the person has. And then all of these def methods, these are our methods where we see def. We've learned about functions. When functions are part of a class, they're called methods. So this blue box represents the 3 methods we have in this class. So that is essentially it for the basics that we need to know to define our first class. Let's now do it in practice. So let's come over here to VS Code. And what I'd like to do is create a new folder that we can use. So let's add a folder to our workspace here. I'll create a new folder, classes, create. We're going to add this classes folder. So I'm going to get rid of these other files that I've had. We don't need to save them. And let's close our book analysis. Now we're in the classes folder. Let's add a file. And what I'm going to do to really try and solidify these concepts for you, I think this will be really helpful, is we're going to create a few different files, and within each file we will have a separate class. So we'll show several examples here to help solidify these concepts. And we've already looked a little bit at the person class, so I want to expand to something different. So let's create an animal class. Oops, let me do this again. We can rename animal.py. There we go. Let's create a rectangle class. Let's create a bank account class. And these names for classes are going to be camel case. What that means, it kind of looks like a camel with the capitals and the lowercase. We start with uppercase, our B, for example, and then we go down, kind of like camel's humps. And then the next word is going to be up again, capital A. And then the rest of that word will be lowercase. So each word begins with a capital letter. That's camel case. So our class names will be camel case. So let's open each one of these here. And let's just start defining these classes. So what we need to do, class, that's that Python keyword. We'll call it rectangle. Okay, colon, and then we hit enter and we'll indent. And we can start defining these functions. I'm going to save our, no, we'll start with our init method. So def __ init. This is going to be our first method. And we're going to type self. And then we'll have some new parameters. So let's copy this into each of our classes. And we'll just change the names. Bank accounts. Animal. So we have 3 different classes we're starting. Let's go back to our rectangle. All we really need to know for a rectangle is height and width. So when we create a rectangle object, we can give it that information. And we're going to do self.height equals height. I'll explain this in a little bit. Self.width equals width. Okay. So those are the attributes that our rectangle will have, just 2 attributes. And let's do the same for our bank account. Let's say we want to have, the account holder and the balance. And that's all we need. We're making this simple. So self.account holder equals account holder, and self.balance equals balance. So this is what we're going to do when we're starting to create these classes. Now let's do the same for animal. Let's say type. What type of animal is it? And let's just say, let's say the animal's, let's say the type, and it's sound. Okay, we'll start with that. Self.type equals type. Self.sound equals sound. So you see we've done the same thing for all of our init methods. And the init method, we'll get into this more in the next video, or in 1 or 2 videos, just builds our object for us. So we need to define these attributes that we want to track. And self, we'll get more into this as well in 1 or 2 videos, is just a placeholder for representing the actual object and how we can reference it. So we've got animal, bank account, rectangle. Let's create in our rectangle class a method, another method. Let's say get area. Okay, we don't need any parameters for that. We're just going to print area is, and then we'll do self.height times self.width. So we're referencing, and we need to put self here in our area as well as a parameter. You saw that those were highlighted because it recognized that we were missing self. We could technically name this anything. Some languages use this, like Java. That would work. See, we don't have any errors. However, that would not be a Pythonic way to do it. We need to use self. Okay, so we've got that function defined. And we're just building out each of these classes and their methods. Again, sometimes the verbiage is interchangeable, but it's proper to use a method as the name for functions inside of classes. So let's build out a method in our bank account. Let's say get balance self, and we'll just return the self.balance. We'll just return that. So we could print the returned value here in our bank account. And for animal, let's do get animal details self. So we could print self.type, and let's make an F string out of this. Self.type makes this sound. Self.sound. Okay. Now let's just test a little bit. Actually, let's go to that point. And in our next video, we're going to learn about how we can instantiate objects from these classes, and we'll probably add another method or two to these. So stay tuned.